Okay, and 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to LibernetLIVE. Libernet is a project and community that attempts and aims to marry blockchain and cryptocurrency technology with books and literature. And I am gratefully joined tonight by our house artist, should we say, Erick Stowe. Hello again, our third time. I can't believe it's been like 9 episodes since you were last on. I looked at the catalog. Yeah. It's crazy, man. Like we're on like episode 14 now, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. And like the last time you were on was episode 5, and like so much stuff has happened since then. We've got Pizza DAO coming to a sort of, coming to some sort of finality. We've got our thing, our project, and our sort of, our sort of preparation for some sort of release happening in 4 days, which is just mind-boggling. And we were just talking about your book and your sort of journey with your book, as it's going to be one of the sort of front-running books and pieces of literature that are going to be sort of released as an example of what we're going to offer as Libernet. So it's just super stoked. I'm super stoked on the whole thing. So yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting.
I look at where we're at and what we're doing, and I think like what we're doing, it seems like to me to be a forerunner to something bigger. We're scaling up to something, and I think that the experience that we're going to get as a group in the next 5 to 7 years is going to help polish to a fine degree what we're creating.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even after the launch, I still sort of see ourselves in sort of prenatal sort of period where we're just like, we're developing organs now, but we still haven't been born yet. We're still not, that still hasn't arrived yet. We're sort of developing a sort of, we're becoming an organism inside a sort of womb, and we're not quite out there yet. But it's just so exciting. It's like, and I like to look at these sorts of podcasts as kind of, they're like sort of time capsules in some way. When we see what's going to happen in 5 years, when we look back, people are going to be like, oh, this is how they started. This is what happened. It's like, and it's just exciting to imagine what 5 years is going to look like, when we're looking back in 2026 and saying like, oh, these are the people that these are the people that sort of started this project when it was very small, and all, the journey is going to be fantastic. It's going to be so interesting. But
I measure it in terms of these little creatures, these little prosopopoeia that I'm making. Pizza DAO calls them space meat, and so that's probably what the cartoon's going to be called.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like every time I look at it, I'm like, it's just so stupid, and that's what makes it so special, is because like for so long I've been trying to refine and get to this point where my art is perfect. And I got to that point at the end of Happy Man, and then now it's kind of like I'm joining a group again. I'm like, I don't really have time for that anymore. Like I want to make something incredibly stupid that is just not visually confusing, but kind of like psychologically like
intriguing or whatever.
Yeah, like who the fuck thinks of this? Like this is the stupidest shit ever. And that's what I'm going for. I hear something. I can't tell you exactly where I heard this, but someone was saying that they tried for a very long time to be seen as smart, and I think that I've tried for that too. And us as writers, we're like, oh, look how smart I am. But like, I guess there's a way to bridge. Like I think Rick and Morty as a TV show is bridge smart and stupid.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, for sure. I've had similar sort of realization when I'm sort of like, like this kind of like, I do kind of like have this sort of interior, whether it's intentional or not, like desire to be the smartest person in the room, someone who's like, teaching people or whatever it is. And it can be it's so much to carry around, man. And that's kind of, that's what I sort of really like about Pizza DAO, is because it's this wonderful way of actually doing something with a good purpose and with a great organizational structure, but it's very silly. And, like the tagline isn't even spelt correctly, pizza should be free or whatever. But like, that blending of sincere aspirational work with silliness is something that I think as a culture is so important. We have this weird sort of separation of like, this is silly time, this is serious, this is serious time. We're just getting lost, you know. Like, you know, I was talking to people on the beach today about like, you know, I just want to do this right. I want to do this right. You know, I'm not prepared, and I'm in my mid-20s, and it's, you know, and I should have it all figured out by now, and I should be sort of a very serious member of society. And I'm like, bitch, no fucking way, man. No way.
No. If my 30s are any like reflection of my 20s, no, I didn't know shit in my 20s. I'm willing to accept in my 30s that I still don't know shit, and I hope that I know something in my 50s. But I talked to some 50-year-olds, like Dylan and I were talking to this Karen the other night, and she's 52 and she's just still in Karen mode. And so like, what, like, I hope that I have some wisdom. I guess that's all I can hope for. But if I end up like totally regressing to the mean at 50, like I won't be too surprised either.
Or disappointed in some ways. I think it'd be, you know, we need to be foolish more. We need to be willing to accept that we can, like, that we do, you know, and foolish people are the ones that take all the risks, because they, you know, and fools are the ones that get told everything. You know, when I was sort of networking and stuff, I'd always kind of be like, you know, people explain concepts to me and I'm like, no, I have no idea what that means. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what you mean. I actually said, I'm like a fetus. I'm like a fetus going into this whole entrepreneurial business world. And I don't know anything, but I want to do some kinky sort of event, you know, in my town or whatever. And I'm just going to do that. And people are like, you're mad. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And that's kind of why I want to do it. And those sorts of foolish, kind of silly endeavors are actually what leaves an imprint on people's lives, I think.
When I'm on the road and you know, I have nothing to lose out there. I'm on, like, just dancing with the edge, like like I'm foolish and I'm hungry and I take risks and everyone likes that. It seems like when I settle down and I get a little bit more established in my environment and I start looking at my immediate community, when I'm like, oh man, I should really be a little bit more conservative with my behavior, and I end up censoring myself, and that censorship is like doubt.
Yes.
So
yeah, for sure. It's a big
navigating
problem.
that.
It's a big problem. I mean, like, you know, I mean, yeah, it's you know, in order to actually make sort of, you know, significant moves and sort of make significant you know, significant expressions, I think, you know, that kind of foolishness is so important. You know, this whole sort of a process of me writing this book to get onto, you know, was kind of ridiculous. I was like, I have a whole idea on language. I haven't been formally educated, and I want to express I want people to read it, and I want to sort of find a way to do it. And obviously, you know, and there's that doubt in my head of like, that's ridiculous, you know, but you know, that's actually, you know, and I made sure not to listen to that doubt. And I think that's one thing that's led me to here, where I'm going to be able to, you know, sort of make this book of mine an NFT as a U, and we're going to, you know, and NFTs themselves, you know, they're such, it's such a new world that people are like, okay, well, you know, like there's no real rule book at the moment, which puts people off, I think, and that's where the beauty is, I think. Yeah,
I feel responsible to promote NFTs because it's for the artists and it's for the creators, and you know, I hope that it I'm not holding out, I'm not holding my breath, but I hope that it does change the environment for creators, because there's some people that all we can do is create, and we're lost without, like, we don't want to be a burden.
yeah,
Like and also it's not sacrificing my pride to go and work at Starbucks, but I simply don't have the time to go and work a job and create at the same time and then be successful in the creation portion, or have an edge against the competition who is coming from maybe a little bit more buoyant position in the market.
yeah.
I took a totally different approach in writing. I didn't care at all what the audience was going to think. I was like, oh, I want them to like the pretty colors and stuff. But I wanted to see what effect my pictures was having on me.
Yeah.
And how the writing was affecting my life, and how I was telling the story and how I was getting lost in it in real life. And it worked out as a good process to because I was being heavily inundated with psychedelics by my friends. And then when I came out of it, I was like, well, I get to polish it up now. And I'm like, because I wasn't taking psychedelics to that degree.
Yes, I think I wish I mean, there was two sides to me when I was writing, and one side was like, I want to express this. I want to express this. I think I've stumbled upon something amazing. And then the other side was like, the other side when I was writing was, I know I'm not doing this correctly. What world am I getting into? Who am I to like sort of, object to some claims of Sartre and Wittgenstein when I'm just some fucking 23-year-old guy that's just writing based on ideas that pop into his head or whatever. Obviously, it wasn't completely like that. I was, being very critical of my ideas, but like there was that doubt of like, I can't justify creating a philosophical book having no qualification in it whatsoever. Now, I thought that side was the part that I was neglecting, and I was overemphasizing this kind of this gleeful, I want to express myself, but really I think it was the other way around. And the fact that like and now I'm actually like, I'm more based on sort of gleeful expression, and it's doing me better. In fact, I thought my problems were coming from the fact that I was being too gleeful and naive about it, when in fact it was the other way around. My problems were coming from doubting myself and constantly needing approval from my friends. I just wrote this paragraph. Do you like it? Does it make sense? Am I wrong in some ways? When as you did, maybe I should have done, I just ran with it. This is like, and I think that's what Libernet's all about. It's sort of, if anything, it's just urging writers, at a psychological level, it's urging writers to say, your voice matters, and matters in a way that literary agents and conventional publishing industries do not encourage or give you the rights to believe. It's so like that, and that's what's so important about this project. Obviously, the technological aspect of it is very important as well, and what blockchain technology is going to do in terms of structural changes or whatever. But at a sort of psychological level, I think it really is about, you are a writer. We don't think you have a choice but to write, because it's in your nature and it's something you have to do just like any other creator. But this is something that you deserve to have promoted, and something you deserve to unleash onto the world.
That's like what the book that I wrote is about. Like the characters trying to get to this place called Worthy, and us struggling with whatever or wherever we came from to be worthy to the general audience. I think I've felt a lot of pressure because I've had studio residencies, and my last residency here in Manitoba, she was like, when are you going to be famous? Like you have to be famous. And I'm like, well, it's time to write a book then. And then I got embraced by the famous and popular community of high artists, like that text message from like 2D from the Gorillas on Instagram, and I'm like,
whoa,
like I don't know, maybe it's like Neo, I didn't make my first jump, but it's difficult to embrace oneself as like, oh, I kind of made it, it, and then people are noticing. And
yes, absolutely. I mean, like, and sometimes it can be sort of, it can feel like undeserved. You sort of worry about being successful, and then once you're successful, you feel it's undeserved, and you feel like, the sort of, you lose either way. You don't have your cake or eat it, as opposed to sort of, accepting, accepting, what you are as a kind of just a process, and not with no requirement to take anything seriously, whether you succeed or fail. Doing it sincerely is a different thing, but like I'm sort of in a position now where I'm kind of, there's a chance that a fair few people will read my philosophical ideas, and that's just crazy to me. But I'm not really like, I don't know personally, I'm not really like saying, oh, this now it's time to clean up my act, get serious, get, down and dirty, or whatever it would be. I'm much more like, I want to be even more experimental now. I sort of know about this. I want to sort of be, experimental, and sort of have fun with creating new projects and coming up with new ideas.
Do you ever feel like you're holding back because you might not be considered for a job because of the way that you're standing out?
I don't know. I honestly, if there is any voice like that, I have really put in work to not listen to it. I really, I really don't consider that to be a useful voice at all, because I don't think it. I don't because I don't think it actually is situational. I think that's just like an ambiguous feeling that anyone gets, and then you apply it to a situation. You're like, oh, I'm too out of the crowd. I mean, like one thing I was saying to my friend the other day, it's like, I have quite, like I've recently done that, I used to be quite a sort of, kind of average looking person. Now I've got these glasses and I tie my hair back, I've got a mustache and I sort of dress kind of smart casual and stuff. And I've chosen, and there's this kind of fear of like, standing out. And now and I actually think the answer to being insecure about that is doubling down on it and saying, I'm going to stand out even more, because then it's intentional. And then people will like, and then it's down to people to make their own decisions.
Well, you're going to attract what you dress like. You're
Yes.
gonna fall into those crowds. Funny you say doubling down. Like Dylan and I, for anyone who's watching, Dylan's the CEO of Libernet. We were talking with one of the people in our group the other day, and she said something incredibly offensive.
Okay.
And it was racist. And we brought it up. She denied it vehemently, and she defended by attacking. And then we're like, okay, we're gonna give her a day. We'll come back to it. We'll circle back to it. We came and talked to her the next day, and she did it again, but she dropped like the N word like 5 times with the hard R. She didn't even say nigga. She was she's caring about it, and
my God, yeah, I'm lucky I missed that.
Dylan said she's like doubling down
Yes.
on conservative ideals, and one thing that I've learned in terms of art is I have to be incredibly flexible. Like if I do one stroke, like the next stroke has to be different, or I'm falling into this rut of the anti-jazz,
Anti-jazz, yeah, sure.
And that's what doubling down just made me think of. And
I mean, oh God, I mean, like, it depends on what you're doubling down on. I mean, if you're doubling, like, I mean, that's kind of the thing, by all means, if you're going to say some racist bullshit, like, don't double down on that. I mean, like doubling down on sort of ability to express yourself, and doubling down on ambiguity rather than doubling down on some sort of pre-imposed idea that you sort of unwittingly follow. That's a different thing, I think. But it's interesting. It's interesting because, like, there's a kind of degree in which you can double down, or a degree in which you can't double. There's but people, people will be happy to double down on, preconceived ideas and concepts that they may not have even chosen, and that's like, it's a huge problem, man. Like I'd much rather double down on sort of, sort of expressing myself against, any kind of culture like that, and especially against, like, bigotry or whatever you want to say,
like, okay, so I followed the suit path, the path of the suit, and I'm wearing the fineries of Leeds and London and Savile Row, and I don't know if I'm doing this to make a point, because I could probably be a little bit more comfortable. I'm trying to offset it with something ridiculous,
right.
Like and this, like, we have this idea of what smart and intelligent represents in antiquity, what wealth is defined by in terms of how we dress intelligently. Looking into fashion in the regards of trying to understand the inside via the outside, is I guess in social context only, refining the internal mechanisms. I don't like, I read in hermetics that it's an inside job, like that, like being a writer is depending on what kind of writing you want to do. If you want to do academic writing, by all means dress like an academic. If you want to do avant-garde or ridiculous, literature, you're going to fall into that group of outsider influences.
Sure. Yeah.
And writing is just so diverse. So
yeah, I think this is I think I sort of ended up saying in my book, which is sort of interesting for talking about that, is that we sort of cannot help but fall into certain social norms, such as like I'm dressed in a blazer and shirt right now because I think it looks smart, and that smartness is probably because like a culture's put that on me without my intention. This is why I am very kind of, I advocate in the end a kind of a sincere irony, and the sincere irony is sort of when we perform certain social rules and norms and cultural ideas, and we even make moral advocations on how to improve things, but ultimately it's ironic, but in a kind of not in a kind of meme ironic way, but in a kind of, I'm doing all of this even though I know that at a fundamental level it isn't fundamental to who I am or how things actually are. And that kind of ironic stance is kind of where I like to be. I like to sort of do the habitual kind of going out and drinking and writing books and saying, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Nice weather. And all the while knowing that it's an act. It's sunyata. It is a performance. And underneath all of that is kind of this, this spiritual kind of just this emptiness of like, how things really are. I think when we talk about, people that are willing to double down on an idea, they've completely gone the opposite way, and they've completely defined themselves by a certain idea that they've conformed to. I'm not saying, I don't know this Karen person that was in the chat. I didn't see that, but it sounds to me like it's representative of a unwillingness to accept irony, like a sort of spiritual irony. This kind of, I'm doing all of this, but as an act. I'm sincere in my actions, but I don't take things seriously. I mean, my whole book, and to begin with, it's sort of saying that language doesn't make sense in so many ways. Yet I'm writing it with language. Lao Tzu said, "Those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know." But he says that, he speaks that. That's great. That's really funny. Alan Watts was talks about that, and the question is, it's like, well, why does he speak then? Isn't he contradicting himself? And the obvious answer is that he has to say that, but not saying that what he's saying is fundamental, but saying it at an ironic level. But this is the kind of irony I really encourage, like a sort of sincere irony, when we are willing to sort of write books about language, saying that language is pointless, and then publishing it, and then pretending to have serious academic debates with other intellectuals, and saying, but knowing deep down that we're not doing anything fundamental that changes the schism of this time and space. We are performing. So
it's interesting. I like that. I saw a quote today earlier that's or I don't know if it was a quote, just I think it was on Twitter. It said, we're suffering from not enough small talk, which is ironic, right? Because like, how are we going to get through some of our problems without discussing them?
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
Just not. And when you mentioned Zen,
yes, absolutely.
My concise definition of Zen is silliness. And the ability to accept how ridiculous and intelligent everything is at a surface level, and at its deepest level, how meaningless it is. But even though it's so meaningless, it's so important to us. It's just like timelines.
It's funny when you're sort of, when you're writing about, say, this kind of, this person that's trying to find worthy, trying to find the place of worthy. Am I right in sort of saying that you break a fourth wall to a certain degree in that?
The whole thing is
the whole thing is,
the novella starts with Happy Man, with the writer writing about Happy Man. He goes into his pen And that's the first page.
That's so funny because I did a podcast with a physician about a month and a half ago, and I thought I got you both confused but it turns out she also writes about a character that wants to kill the author. I think it is. I think she's also breaking the fourth wall in a lot of ways. It's interesting that they're both sort of graphic novels in a certain way, but I find that sort of idea like kind of resemblant of kind of sunyata and kind of the performance aspect, and if we think about the characters that are trying to break the fourth wall, that leaves the question of where is our fourth wall, and where do we break through kind of stories that have been put in place for us, and ways to actually break that, I suppose, ways to actually say, I'm actually going to find this sort of anonymous creator of the story and resist his narrative and do things that are counter to that kind of narrative that's been put in place for me. I think when I read about these sorts of stories, that's kind of always the thing I think about. I think about our fourth wall.
Yeah, if all of life is a stage,
yes,
and like I don't know. I think that, and this might be like the Joe Rogan approach that I feel like DMT might be the fourth wall, and where a lot of these theories about the simulation theory, which is getting clearer and clearer. Like if we're playing a video game, we're creating a metaphor in our life of playing someone else. But if trauma is cyclical, wouldn't someone be playing us as a video game? Like, so who's behind that curtain becomes the next question. What's behind the curtain? Is it this grand illusion that's been concocted by in space-time, 1,000 years ahead, and we're just playing like old simulations of people? Becomes scary to imagine these things, and if we can imagine it, it must exist.
Well, absolutely. I don't even think you need to obviously this sort of the quantum physics aspect of simulation theory is very interesting, but I don't even think you need to appeal to that kind of idea of like, are we in simulation? I think the simulation is very existent in our own lives in comparison to other lives. The simulation and the liberty from the freedom from the simulation are both here. That's when we can sort of actually, the whole thing about carving your own path and doing things, doing things that no one's done before, ways that are iconoclastic and contradict cultural norms and values is a way of breaking through the simulation of our society and our culture. And that's something that I really, very much advocate. I think the simulation, it's also here. We are also, and when you hear people sort of appeal, and I sort of realize I end up sort of talking about this every episode. It always comes back to this, but when I talk to people out and about, not people that are sort of weird eclectic people, like people that are working on a project like us in Petersdale, but like the normal people, people are sort of they are so entangled in seriousness. It's shocking, and that's why I think I always come back to it, because I've got so much pent up energy from hearing all these people sort of say, how's life? No, I'm getting there. I've got to work. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's all right. It's just what it is, isn't it? You just got to get on with it. I don't know. Those are sort of nice ways of saying about it's just like, life's I'm getting older. Blah blah blah. And it's like I think half of aging in the Western culture is like self-imposed. I think we end up telling ourselves that we're a certain age, and then we feel the aging effects on, we sort of self-create it sometimes. Like, we got like fucking Easy, for example. Like, he's just such a young, Easy one. If people know, we've had a couple of interviews with him. He's one of the, the primary people in this project. He's got such a young personality, because he just feels it, and he's just like, I feel young, and I'm, and I thought he was like, I don't know, late 20s, and then he was talking about his rap battles at Cypher and saying, doing that takes me back to the 90s, and I was like, wait, how old are you? And he was like, I'm 43. And I was like,
I didn't know
what? Yeah, he's 43. He's 43. And you're just like, what keeps him young? It's like, it's a state of mind, and if it's a state of mind, then the people who get older are also doing it from a state of mind. And they're doing it based on the idea that they have to seriously take the idea that they're getting older into account when behaving and acting in the world into themselves. They end up saying, oh, I am this certain age, so I've got to, and then it physically happens to them, and that's the pride. If even aging is socio-culturally enforced, then think of all the other things that are as well. That's why it's important to break the simulation in a lot of ways. Anyway, yeah.
There is of course danger in not imposing like age norms. I think that if we leave behind our contemporaries, we're leaving behind a big part of ourselves. Like, but then again, yeah, the inundation of
I agree. I agree. I mean, I don't think we should be arrogant enough to then like sort of like assume like, oh, this is the way it should be, or even ignore very important aspects of our culture, because they of course exist, in ways that we probably can't comprehend. I was speaking to he's a very rational friend of mine, Kalen. He's a very rational person, and I think he really prioritizes sort of respecting your previous culture, and I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that you have to completely abide by it. I think you can respect it and say, okay, I've learned from you, and I'm going to do it my way anyway. And I think you can balance both of those things.
There certainly has to be a balance struck between, well, and at the same time for people that, especially writers who are at every point of their life at the same time, who understand the concept of time, and like, okay, it's an illusion, and it's completely subjective. So at the same time, I'm like, right now I'm 15 or 14, and then I'm also 36 at this, like, that's a big discussion. That's huge. And I don't know how to confront or continue that in terms of like statutes of like legal representations of age versus mental representations of age.
Nice.
Versus ageism, versus it seems like the state versus man or woman, and how to mitigate and like be appropriate with our age while being free with it. It's almost antithetical to attempt to be free in our society if I touch on freedom, because there's probably like if there's a behavior, there's probably a law regulating it or a system regulating it.
I mean, I often don't think that's necessary, actually. I'm not sure. I went out
also
today.
Believe in anarchy.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like, laws obviously do it, but I think norms can do a hell of a lot of, like, I mean, hell effective, and also a lot of damaging in some ways. Like I went out with a coffee cup. I didn't have a takeaway cup. I didn't have a flask. I just went out with a mug, and I took the mug, and then someone stopped me, and he was like, very kind of normal road ordinary person. He was like, what have you brought a coffee mug out? And I was like, yes, I did. Would you feel more comfortable if I had a takeaway mug that I threw away and added to landfill? It's very strange. There's no law saying you can't take out a coffee, like a real coffee mug, to the beach or whatever, but it's certainly implied through a norm sense. I just wanted to mention, like, when you talk about writers, please come back to what I was going to say. When we talk about writers who are faced with this at all times, it can be quite shocking. It can be quite shocking for writers to sort of be taught in the education system that we have to base it off previous writers, and we have to kind of almost copy style. I mean, it's probably even worse than I'm making it out to be. When we're taught in school how to write, we're taught how to read old authors, which is great, and old authors are fantastic to educate ourselves from. And then we're sort of, and then as soon as we do something that's the slightest bit unorthodox, the education system will punish us, even though every single great change in writing history has been done from an iconoclasm and a resistance to the educational system. I think of beat poetry as a great example, and I forget his name, Allen Ginsberg. When you watch Kill Your Darlings, I think it is. You talk about Daniel Radcliffe playing it. He's playing Allen Ginsberg, and he's writing poetry, and and they don't like, they say it's good, but we can't qualify you for this because it's not the way we do it. Allen Ginsberg is a household name for poets and poetry. The same with every other writer in history. It's all about that. And the education system punishes us for it. And in exactly the same way, when I'm talking to this person that, her dream is to become, her dream is to become a sort of big writer. The concept of doing it our way and doing it in a decentralized format for Libernet is almost shocking to people, because it's not how we've been taught. We've been taught to do it this way, and this
self-addressed stamped envelope.
Yeah, exactly.
The weeks of waiting, months of waiting,
years of waiting, all of it. It's the way it should be. Artists struggle to get exhibitions and galleries and recognition, because if they didn't, then then it wouldn't be the way it's done. I was speaking to my friend, and I keep referencing past conversations, but I think it's relevant, about they had the idea that there's too much music out there, and I want to sort of discuss with them about it on this podcast, because they say musicians finally, so many musicians have the ability to create music and stream it, that there's too much music out there. And my response, I mean, obviously this isn't very fair because they can't argue their side, but my opinion is good. I'm glad there's too much music out there. I'm glad there's loads of crappy music out there, because people like it, and I'm not in a position to judge how people should listen to music. So I'm happy that musicians actually are able to create and produce and stream their music. I think that is, even though I don't like most of it, I think it's completely against how we were taught music 20 years ago. But I'm just happy that people, I think self-expression is not a choice in that way. Sorry.
I think that the systematic disparity between people who have a lot of time to wait versus people who need to get their work to market, it empowers generationally wealthy individuals, people who grew up with a lot of cushion, like trust funds, and whose parents have multiple properties. Like me, as an artist, like I left home, and I realized when I came to Canada from the United States that home was a far gone concept, that there is no longer a home, and I became homeless for a while, and then I had to navigate this new reality. But and that's what caused me, though, to be a prolific artist, to create, get as much out as possible. There's a certain I'm really a fan of Ayn Rand's novel and the whole concept of
Atlas Shrugged. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's such a good allegory for what creative and innovative creative people have to go through in order to make an impact, make the kind of impact that their vision is compelling them to make. Like when you have something that's different, and you go into a market with something different, it's inevitably going to be misunderstood. I learned this with my partner, who is, I would create art, and for the longest time, intelligent people would look at my art and they're like, oh, that's amazing. Or people who are experienced in art be like, oh, that's really something special. That's something different. And she'd see it and go, I don't like it. And we decided, or came to the understanding, that when someone doesn't like something, it's because they don't understand it. So people that are bringing something new, seriously, damn, right?
Yeah.
So if we're innovating, it's automatically an uphill battle.
Of course it is, and that's the whole. I think we are. I don't know. I think there are at least three uphill battles for Libernet, and one is cryptocurrency. Two is NFTs, through how we're going to actually put the books out, and then the last one is DAOs, I think, which are, so we're getting paid in cryptocurrency, which is already completely against everything that the US.
I've already bought pot with that cryptocurrency from not the store. Like, this girl was like, hey, do you want to buy some pot? I'm like, hey, you're trying to learn about crypto, let me buy some pot from you with crypto.
Yeah. What's the cryptocurrency that people use to buy weed or pot?
I taught her about ETH. She's trying to mine Pi, and I'm like, man, Pi's like because I just know that, like, from my immediate level of not being involved in the community that is circulating these currencies, because what it comes down to with currencies is it's 100% about people and communities and how we're building wealth between us and who has what to offer and how they're recouping on their expenses of what they're offering and their intellectual property, their time, their money, and what it takes to do that, or how greedy they are.
Inevitably.
Yeah. It'll always circle back to that, but you can be greedy and unintelligent too. It's good. The money will slip through your fingers like sand. And as far as cryptocurrency, I think that we're already late on cryptocurrency. Like you and I, I've been in the cryptocurrency environment for maybe 5-6 months now.
Yes.
And I feel like I have years and years of catching up to do and contributing to this environment. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, and I wanted to bring this back to the Ayn Rand objectivism. Objectivism. Thank you so much. So what happened in that novel, spoilers alert.
Click away now. Click away now.
Gonna give you a second. The Taggart and the protagonist, female protagonist, and I think even John Galt ended up being in this environment, this enclave that they created, which is essentially one fractal level below everybody else. They're like, we're going underground. And they built their whole community in the mountains, and they developed their own currencies. And they're like, you're intelligent, you can contribute this. You're intelligent, you can contribute this. But they only let certain people in. And I think that's what the crypto environment is gearing towards, is to keep Karen out and to keep traditional wealthy people out, even though they're in, like, they got money.
Keep traditional wealthy people from accruing undeserved wealth, I think, would be a sort of slightly more specific way of saying it.
We're trying to restore a little bit of order and give a little bit of power back to the people before we eat the rich, which is another inevitable circumstance. It is like history has proven it time and time again. When we get to this point, the 99-1 split, the people revolt, rise up. What we're doing now is we're doing it intelligently
and non-violently, to a certain extent.
Once that fails, which it will usually inevitably fail, we'll just go and eat them.
I was talking about Gaddafi and the whole thing with Libya yesterday, and how, and I ran into someone who I didn't think had this view, but he had the opinion that Gaddafi was completely, he was more or less innocent as a leader of a country can be, and sort of, from my tertiary research, it was just sort of conclusive of the fact that he didn't want to have the US dollar as the standard. He wanted to go back to gold, and the Americans.
That's why they went after him. And from what I understand.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, exactly. And the Americans are like, no, thank you. let's convince your people that they're a monster, and then have them eat you alive. And lo and behold, Libya is not only probably US dollar standard right now. I don't need to check, but they're a wasteland. They're not a country. They are.
That's in for people who are for areas who have like extremely wealthy resources. That benefits the reigning champ on earth. Like if you're a king in feudal, in the feudal world, like you want your neighbors to be in chaos. You need your neighbors to be in chaos, because if they're not in chaos, they're plotting against you.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say that you are entirely right about the fact that there is a high chance that this will all fail. But that's the whole point of why we're doing this, because you need to try and you need to make an example. And maybe, just maybe, you at least change a few minds, or you change the world, to be sort of profound speaking, or kind of, proverbial speaking, or whatever. I wanted to sort of speak of, I think what you're saying about that the community formed in the mountains comes back to the third uphill battle. So if we have if Libernet is against, we're sort of fighting because we're using cryptocurrency instead of the US dollar. That's one uphill struggle. That is both governmentally discouraged and culturally discouraged. NFTs, which are culturally and discouraged and probably governmentally discouraged as well. The last one is sort of DAOs and decentralized autonomous organizations, where people can work how they want on what they want in whichever fashion they want, and for as long as they want. And that doesn't sit well for people that believe the 9 to 5 is the appropriate experience had by the workers of the world. And 9 to 5 is fairly easy for our Western countries in comparison to third world countries that work far more for far less.
Because of Western
influence, absolutely. And which is why it's, you know, and I always think about Chomsky, and I think about how he has hardly seen the progress he'd wanted to see in regards to creative freedom, anarchistic communes, and the reduction of the barbarities of US foreign policy. In 50, 60 years, he's been hammering on about the subject. And you think such stress and such defeat would kill him off, but he's 92 and still going strong. And I think about Chomsky, and I think he's a much smarter man than I. And he is fully about keeping on fighting the good fight. And as a result, he's become a symbol for people that, you know, integrity, and people who want to hold people accountable and fight for things that are worth fighting for such a long time. I mean, he wrote a paper in the fucking 40s and he's still writing. It's just beyond belief. And so when I was talking to my friend, who they play devil's advocate to me, and they're sort of, you know, what's the point in fighting for all of this if it's you know, if there's so much pushback, if there's such a chance that, like, you know, it won't work in the way that you want to, or even at all. It's like, because that's the whole point, baby. It's the whole point to fight, you know, to do that, and to try and make the world a better place, even if it doesn't work. It's like, you know, and that's just, you know, it's the whole thing, man, you know.
It's the inspiration. Like, we need inspiration, and the inspiration to remain inspired is what's fueling the current revolution. And this is, for me, I think the second time I've seen in my life sort of like the counterculture the counterculture underground to start to be like, oh, we're just as cool as you that are buying your wares. We're makers. And I still think making is really cool, but I'm thinking about this yesterday, that the logical way to approach the market is to understand that you can't make anything. The market was built around diversification and specialization. And if it's just unfortunate that the larger enterprises keep eating up the smaller enterprises. So we can't have just one whale in the ocean, one super whale, because nature is the definition of nature is diversity. It's I feel like at one point I had such a firm grasp of what it all meant. So when someone brought up a point to me, I'd be like, well, this is the reason for this, and this is the reason for this. And then it's been rattled since COVID and since the riots, and like things, because the way things are doesn't necessarily mean that they need to stay that way. We need to evolve to allow the computer to do as much as it can, and allow people as much freedom as they can, so that people are living their lives and aren't working endlessly in a stressful cycle
with some creative aspiration that they will never see any fruit from, which is where I was, and I was willing to accept that, and I was willing to go work in a factory. The night I got a call offer with a certain job offer, you know, this is the sorts of you know, and it's those sorts of moments, if anything, that make it worthwhile. Those sorts of, oh, you know, that kind of silver lining, that kind of that kind of idea, that the promise of something better to come. It's and that's the whole thing. And the one thing about nature is that nature always wins, despite what people might think.
Well,
Nature.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I didn't. You didn't.
I like that Andy Warhol called his studio the factory. As a prolific artist, when you talk about going to the factory, we want to bridge this gap. We don't want to continue to drive a sieve between the two groups, because we're one group. Mm-hmm. We're all human. Mm-hmm. And the factory mentality is based on exploitation. Is this just the way things are? Mm-hmm. Can once one person rises to a certain level of prominence or power, is that 100% based on exploitation of others?
Yeah. It's that's the question. I mean, like, to sort of take your question literally, I don't think it's always the case. I think in many cases it is, and the exploitation can be either explicit or implicit. I don't believe that hierarchies should be completely abolished. I don't believe that we should all have exactly the same amount of money. I don't think even a lot of communists actually believe that. I don't think they really believe that we should have exactly, everyone should be exactly the same. I actually, when it's funny when I try and think about what a communist imagines in their head when they think communism, and when someone who's an anti-communist does in their head, they think of completely different things. And this is why it's so important to encourage nuance and open-mindedness to actually understand what the pictures in each other's heads are. When I think when a communist thinks of communism, they think of something much more to do with freedom of the human spirit, as opposed to, like privatization of grains of rice, which is of course what might have happened in some of the regimes in the 20th century. But it's not that they don't make the same picture. I think if communism cries for anything, it cries for freedom of the human spirit above anything else, as opposed to other concepts that get carried along with it. And that's and that sentiment, so which remains really important to me. Like I'm not sure I agree with Marx's ultimate end goal, but I think that kind of formalized philosophical revolutionary is a staple into so many people's imaginations, because I think it represents something really important. Just like Che Guevara. People don't have to be specific about what Che Guevara was specifically fighting for. There's particular political circumstances that led to him doing what he did, but it's that symbol of like, I want to be free. I want my human spirit to express itself. I think that's what people, when people see Che Guevara, that's kind of the cultural identification. That's what they think about. That's what I think is important about those sorts of things. And that
I had a vision of an ideal world first in the 8th grade, and that world was island segments, like all of the world was like strips of island. Everything is kind of based geographically around the equator, so everything's warm or temperate. And then I had my most recent vision of utopia, insofar as like tribalism, because I'm going from state to state in the United States on tour, and I'm seeing how different cultures are from state to state. And then I'm going to small towns, and I'm seeing how different cultures are from small town to small town. Mm-hmm. The havens that could be created, not tax havens, because all we seem to talk about it as adults are money and taxes, but the cultural havens that could be allocated if everyone just minded their own fucking business and fell in with the group that they were most appropriate for, I think we would have a lot less problems, instead of driving borders between people and saying like, you're going to have to like really try to find your group, instead of everybody, going to one group, trying it and be like, I don't like that. And then they would naturally move to a more appropriate group. The problem is, of course, with or not the problem, the barriers are inherent in barriers, which from what I understand, define the work Like the borders create the art that's in the borders, you know. I just want to paint outside the lines. I just want to paint right off the canvas.
Yeah.
And that makes a mess. That makes a hell of a mess.
But it's you know, mess is better than imprisonment, I'd say, you know, in that sort of way. So yeah. I mean, and in terms of sort of, you know, painting a new picture, we've got we're sort of finishing up about an hour now. We've got 4 days. Dylan's going to be on tomorrow to talk about you know, finally the man shows his face, you know, and that's going to be really exciting. This is his
first time?
It's his first time.
Wow.
It's his first time coming on. Yeah. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be probably going to be a bit of a change of pace, you know, in some ways, but that's going to be exciting. And Dylan's going to be talking about the big launch, baby. And we're excited, you know, I'm going to be dead excited to have him on, and we're going to, you know, talk at length about everything that's going to be cooked up over the next 3 days. I wonder what we're going to be doing over the next 4 days to sort of put everything in check. It's going to be really exciting. So yeah, but it's been brilliant having you on, as always. It's you know, third time. I think I enjoyed this conversation the most, actually. I think, you know.
Really? All right, so the next one's going to be better.
And better, and we'll just
yeah.
We'll be yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like in a year. No, so it's going to be
hopefully better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like
you know, we'll be in tears, and we'll be like, you know, our conversations are going to be so engaging. We're going to be having them rolling around our heads for months to come, I'm sure. But it's been really fun having you on, Eric. It's going to be exciting sort of talking to you on the server over the next 4 days as we put everything in place. Is there anything you'd like to sort of talk about, you know, sort of various things you've got? Do you want to talk about your book? This is probably the last time you're going to be on the podcast before the NFT gets launched. So is there anything you'd like to say about the book to sort of hype people up?
If anyone watching this wants to learn how to create a comic book from a lateral perspective, not like linearly. If you're learning to make a comic book, you want to learn how to draw backgrounds, you want to learn how to sequence, you want to learn about everything that has to do with like gestures, and this is more of a lateral perspective on how to develop a story. And the character I created when I was 11 because I was very sad. So I created a character called Happy Man as blatant ripoff of Superman. And then he came back, and it's almost like the way Superman was created to combat racism. Happy Man is the new Overman. Like there's
right,
like man, Superman, and the Ubermensch, and that's what Happy Man represents. And the ability, he's like if you take all the Marvel superheroes, he's like, they're all smashed up in him. He has his dark side, he has his light side. He's one. He's Neo.
He's Neo. That's so that's so, I mean, yeah. And what's it called? I forget what it's called again.
It's called Happy Man.
It's just called Happy Man. Brilliant.
It's
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna look forward to reading this thing. You know, it's gonna be super exciting. How long is it? Like, what's the?
It's 116 pages.
But it's a comic book, so it's not like 116 pages of like a book. It's like a sort of academic book. So it's
So the first section, and I don't know how many pages, maybe like 38, 40 to 46 pages, start on a pad about that big. And then he's like in the book, and he's like, man, it's a little bit small in here. Like I need a little bit bigger environment. So there's a shift, which it just says zoop, and he transports into a bigger book that's about this big. And then he ends up going into the digital universe, which has kind of unbounded intricacies within the pixelation. Is very scientific as far as how
I can't even imagine what the art looks like. I mean, you know, like I'll put your website in the description, but like, you know, Erick's art is just like, you know, it's like, you know, and you're currently working on 4-dimensional vector graphics and stuff like that, which is just like, which just sounds I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounds crazy. And
4D is like using 3D models and sculptures to create movement. And
okay,
it's going to be a while, but and there's so many artists that are like great artists that are creating stuff for, you know, Disney, Pixar and stuff. Like it's not a new concept. It's about as old as Toy Story and before. It's just that I'm only now getting to this point. So like at the end of Happy Man, the last panel that I wrote about him, he's like, I want to get animated. This sucks. Like I can't, like there's no consistency in here. You keep drawing me differently. And so I want to create a consistent Happy Man and be able to create a cartoon based on that.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to delving into it and just sort of picking your brain with it, you know, and it's going to be exciting. Yeah, Eric, it's been fantastic having you on. And thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed, please share with a friend. If you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe, and, you know, share with a friend you might think would benefit from this conversation. I mean, you know, it's kind of sincere, serious talk, but we are just all we're all a bunch of goofballs over here. And if you are interested in, you know, suggesting what you'd like to see more of, or there's something you'd like to sort of address, maybe a criticism, you know, please leave it in the comments, please. And by all means, please address us on Twitter, address me on Twitter. You know, I'm sure Eric would be perfectly happy with, you know, talking to him on Twitter. I assume that's okay. So just please, you know, get involved. You know, the whole point of this is to, you know, remove borders. So,
and if you want to buy these glasses as an NFT, hit me up.
There we go. I'll leave Eric's Twitter in the description. So thanks again, Eric, for coming on. Look forward to talking to you very, very soon. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks very much. Enjoy the sun if it's sunny where you are.